The Press Club of Western Pennsylvania announced the winners of the 61st Golden Quill Awards on Wednesday, May 28, 2025 at Rivers Casino in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The Golden Quills competition honors professional and student excellence in print, broadcast, photography, videography, and digital journalism in Western Pennsylvania and nearby counties in Ohio and West Virginia. Today, joining me are three winners, two of which work right here at the Butler Eagle. They won in the category of Excellence in Written Journalism, Enterprise Investigative Division 2. Their winning title was Secret Service Flaws Enabled Trump Assassination Attempt, so by Eagle staff, Spotlight PA, and ProPublica, and the Butler Eagle. The judges' comments were fantastic. Thoroughly reported articles on an extremely important topic, revealed critical information about security lapses, and connected that information to broader trends and the dangers of outdoor events for presidential candidates. Gives readers a broad understanding of the issues. So joining me today, sitting to my right, is Tracy Leturgey. Tracy Leturgey is the assignment editor here for the Butler Eagle. Tracy returned to her hometown to join the Butler Eagle staff in 2021 after working for Richland Source in Mansfield, Ohio, where she produced award-winning, community-centered local journalism, led several audience engagement initiatives, and played a critical role in expanding coverage to nearby Ashland, Ohio. Since returning to Butler County, Leturgey has led efforts to produce and sometimes fund impactful journalism projects around addiction, political polarization, and other topics. She studied at Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania, now known as Penn West, and has been recognized regionally and nationally for her work. A self-proclaimed Scrabble nerd, Tracy resides in Jefferson Township, Butler County, with her family and two dogs. Tracy, welcome. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah.
You're welcome. Eddie Trizzino, sitting to the right of Tracy, and if you're watching, it doesn't really matter where he's sitting. If you're listening, it doesn't matter where he's sitting. Eddie Trizzino has worked at the Butler Eagle since February of 2021 and became the paper's community editor in November of 2024. He has covered all areas of Butler County and now tells the stories of interesting people, places, and things in the area. Trizzino enjoys watching movies, listening to and playing live music, reading murder mystery books, right there with you, running, and a good piece of pizza. He is excited to be recognized for working with the team that earned the Golden Quill Award. Eddie, welcome.
Hey, what's up?
And then joining us via Zoom is Danielle Ohl. Danielle is an investigative reporter for Spotlight PA, where she covers the justice system. Danielle joined Spotlight PA in 2021 as a Capitol reporter after starting her career at the Capitol Gazette in Annapolis, Maryland. She is a former ProPublica local reporting network partner, and in 2019 earned a Pulitzer Prize special citation alongside her newsroom for covering the mass shooting of her own colleagues. Danielle, welcome to Alter Eagle.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to ask each of you, and I think for Eddie and Tracy, this is probably a no-brainer, but why did each of you cover this story?
Oh, for us, we had to. We were thrown into this, right?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
You came in that night, right?
Yeah. So I was actually, I had been the editor most of that week with the managing editor off, and so we actually brought in a former managing editor, one of our part-timers now, Jamie, to work that actual day for the rally on July 13th. And so I was off. I took my kids to a birthday party and was driving home with them in the car, all sugared up, when Jamie called me and said, hey, Trump's been shot. And we didn't know anything more than that at that point. He was being hoisted off stage, and I pulled over my car, posted the first couple items there with kids in the car, side of the road, on my phone. Got the information out there to our readers because Jamie needed some support there while he was checking on our staff, making sure they were okay. But yeah, the night went on, of course, and we realized, this was a really big deal.
Yes.
So I was, of course, in that office that night, but as the night and the week went on, we looked at how this happened here. Like, we felt like that was a really important thing to do, and we knew maybe we couldn't do it alone, but we could do it together.
Yeah. And then Eddie, you said you came in the next day.
Yeah, I was off that day, and so I knew when I saw the news that I'd probably be called in, so I was expecting it.
With Spotlight, PA. Danielle, where did you sort of get pulled into this whole collaboration?
Yeah, so typically we don't cover breaking news items. It's very rare that we do that because we kind of focus on like longer, more thoroughly reported out investigative pieces that look at things over a long period of time or like the impact of what's happening at a state level. But with this, just given like the absolute kind of like the
Yes.
scale of what happened, I think we, as part of our mission at Spotlight, we're trying to provide assistance and local, and reporting that local outlets can no longer maybe support given the way that things have shrunk over the years. And so we assumed that the Eagle had everything under control and we knew that they were kind of the experts here. But I believe that we had reached out just in kind of a supportive role
Yes.
to get a sense of whether there was anything that we could do from a statewide perspective to support the work that they were doing on the ground. And I think just everything kind of snowballed from there with ProPublica reaching out to us reaching out to the Eagle, and the three of us saying, why don't we just do this together?
I actually have the paper. I went to our morgue yesterday here and got the paper out because I know I had it from last when this article came out. Well, thank you. This joint investigation came together. You sort of touched on that. So what unique sources who can speak to this, documents, footage, body cam, really propelled the reporting, especially for this article in particular that we're talking about today?
Yeah, I mean, we know Butler County well. We have got the sources and such, but I mean, when something like this happens and all of that media is, coming down on Butler County, local law enforcement, they couldn't actually share an awful lot early on. And actually, even now, as we're looking at working on an anniversary publication, again, I mean, there's threats of lawsuits in this situation. I can certainly understand why officials can't necessarily speak to that event in a ton of detail. So for us, it was really important to think outside of the box. Like, we knew we had to cover this, but our usual means of just calling up the sheriff, talking to the DA, they weren't quite as feasible as usual. And eventually we did, get speaking with the sheriff and the DA, and we're able to clear up some misconceptions and stuff that were out there. But yeah, we really had to think outside of the box with this one. One of the biggest ways I can think of this is the body cam footage, which Eddie, you were the one who painstakingly went through all of it.
Oh,
Yeah,
If I recall, yeah.
How fun was that?
Well, I first had, I don't remember if I was the one who filed the right to know request to get that,
You
but we
were.
had to first do that, which was a whole
Yeah.
thing.
I think Danielle did too.
Yeah, you probably
Yeah.
did. I think like everybody.
Everyone
once,
was.
So you had to file a request in
Yeah.
order to even get that footage. How long did it take? Do you guys remember, like ballpark, maybe what it took to even get that?
Well, I know they had to redact some things, right? Like, so that was a whole thing.
Of course, yeah. I think
Yeah.
there was definitely.
Some editing.
Yeah, I think the way that Pennsylvania gives out any kind of audio or video recording that belongs to law enforcement is kind of odd. It's not the traditional right to know process that people may be familiar with. There's actually a separate law called Act 22.
Okay.
And you have to make those requests by certified mail. You have to do it within, I think, 60 days of the event. I know. You have to do it within, I think, 60 days of the event. So if you're covering something that happened in the past that you just now are coming onto, you're out of luck. Luckily, in this case, we were pretty on it. But yeah, I ended up filing, I think, like 7 of those Act 22 requests to all of the local law enforcement, because unfortunately, the state police didn't at the time have a statewide body cam program. So we weren't sure if the state police would have any video. We didn't know which law enforcement agencies did. And I believe it was eventually the local Butler police that kind of decided they felt it was of public interest to release this, because that's the other part of Act 22 that is frustrating for journalists and members of the public that may want to provide accountability. It's completely voluntary. It's up to the agency whether or not to release the footage. So yeah, I think the outlets that knew how to do it did nationally. And I remember that day that everyone got the footage, I saw it first on CNN and recall being upset because I had initially gotten a rejection from them saying, we are not disclosing the footage at this time. I open my email and I'm scrolling back and I see 2 hours ago we had gotten it, and I messaged my editor and Tracy, and I was like, we have the footage. Like,
yeah, that's amazing.
So, yeah, but I mean, I totally, like, the Butler Township Police, I've got to give them all the props for actually sending that and wanting to be transparent and get that out there, because I really, like, I was really surprised, to be honest with you. I didn't think that was going to be something we got, but it did provide a lot of really important insight to that day. And I mean, even in the reporting that we just won this Golden Quill for, I mean, it's that gives us a lead right into our story and sets the scene and tells, I mean, it tells the story. That footage was the key. It was Drew Blasco reacting to the fact that this happened and saying, like, I told them. Like, that said a lot right there. Well, it was hard though. I mean, like, these people, like, they couldn't and shouldn't have, you know, talk to us in depth. I can totally understand that. And so that video footage and eventually the 911 calls that we got as well from the county, that took even more hoops to jump through. And I don't really blame them for the hoops.
Well,
we jump.
So just touching on that, and this is why thank you all for having this conversation with me, is people need to understand that, yes, we are the local news source here in Butler, but there are so many hurdles that these journalists that you have to jump over as journalists. And we're talking about something that was not only on a local level, a statewide level, but it was a federal level. It was I mean, we're talking about a presidential candidate who was shot at, someone died, and there were other people injured. And I think at that point, all the journalists and the photographers and the people that were there from the Butler Eagle that were there in person, they kept doing their jobs. And then you're coming out of a situation of being with your kids all day, and you're off, and you're all being told this is what just happened, and this is worldwide news. So I want everyone in Butler County, or anyone who reads even outside of Butler County, to understand. You want answers from the Butler Eagle. I promise you, they're doing everything that they can, which is why they brought in other, sources to help them. You guys needed the help. We're a small newsroom. I think people think that we're we have 50 reporters up there. We don't have, there's not that many of you, and you're doing a lot of work. So I just wanted to say that. That's why I wanted to have this conversation. I think people need to understand you do everything that you can. So when we are talking about key findings, main systematic vulnerabilities uncovered. So communication breakdowns, lack of unified command, radio issues, technical failures, drones, roof access oversight. I know, Tracy, you said you could probably speak to this briefly. Just what can you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, in regards to systematic vulnerabilities, to me, communication just stands out across the board. I think that was the big thing that we found, right, Danielle? Yeah. Okay. I mean, so first, they go to this, they plan, and we don't have much planning that even happened. A lot of these, local officials didn't even know that Trump was indeed coming to Butler County until just a little more than a week beforehand. And then when they do, meet and make a plan, there's no substantial written plan that's ever given out. And then I remember getting a hold of what the ESU ultimately put together for themselves, and because they wanted to have that for their guys, but they didn't get that from Secret Service. And then the other piece in regards to communication there, the radios and the cell phones, the what was it? Danielle used the word. It was like a cobbled together communication system in the report. We were worried going into that day about our own cell phone usage and the reporters who would be there, and questioning whether or not they would or wouldn't get service at that venue.
Yes.
Like, we knew that,
of course,
as the local news agency, that was going to be a potential problem for us reporting on that day, and it was. It was also a problem for law enforcement as well.
Well, because I noticed when they had the second rally, the rally in October, they put those communication towers up over by the farm show grounds. So you notice those went up, those big towers. And I mean, I assumed obviously it was because they recognized when you get a lot of people in a big area like that, and then something catastrophic happens, typically you're going to have failure in communication because of so many people trying to access their phones and make calls, and it's all trying to get out. That's what that was the same issue in New York City on 9/11. So, okay. So moving on, when we talk about the Secret Service's public or federal response since publication, you got a real short answer to that one. We briefly discussed that.
Yeah.
Have they given a response since this happened?
Representative Mike Kelly, here for Butler County, he led a bipartisan investigation on a national level. That there ultimately culminated with a report that was issued, I think it was December of just this past year. Over the past 6 months, I haven't necessarily seen or heard any, like immediate, like, or publicly communicated adjustments there. But that being said, that report really dove into things. They visited the farm show grounds on a couple occasions, and ultimately it was bipartisan. Both parties wanted to find out and learn about it, and they looked into the Butler attempt, but also into the one in Florida.
So I'm going to touch on that one. So what follow-up work are we planning? Again, this is a real short one. I know the anniversary's coming up, and you guys are going to be doing an anniversary edition, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So over here at the Butler Eagle, we are looking to, actually, we've already been working on how we look back at this past year. We know that one day impacted Butler County so much more beyond that. Actually, I think it impacted our nation, our world a little bit more than just that day. A lot more than just that day. And so for us as the local newspaper, we're really honing in on how Butler County has been impacted. We think that's important. And for us, that's the assassination attempt, but it's also the fact that a local firefighter died at that
Lost
event.
His life, yes.
Yeah, that's still continued to have our community reeling a little bit. He was just so well known, well loved on both sides of the aisle.
Absolutely. So Danielle, this is specifically for you. So as a statewide newsroom, how did you balance the local details from Butler with broader trends in the Secret Service protocol?
Yeah, we really wanted to make sure that we weren't stepping on any toes. I think, you read my bio. I have a local journalism background, and so do most folks at Spotlight. So while the Eagle was doing their incredible on-the-ground reporting that really served as the foundation for everything that we wrote, I, along with my editor, Matt Dempsey, spent time reviewing other rallies that Trump had in Pennsylvania in the past, but also elsewhere back to 2015, I think, right? We went back and looked at when he was campaigning and then when he was president and then when he wasn't president, just to see if there were any trends in the way that he was secured, basically. And what we saw was increasingly as he left the White House, he left those protections, he started to favor these more open air, more accessible, certainly, to the community, but less secure venues. And that kind of dovetailed with this very ad hoc nature that Tracy was talking about. So we really wanted to first identify those and then, to the extent that we could, talk to the people who were involved in the planning of some of them. So that's where, Jessica from ProPublica kind of talked to some folks in her area in the Midwest about how things went in Detroit and, in her coverage area. And I talked to some folks about how things went in like Whitehall. They had a rally that was kind of just in a field that was up against the Trexler Preserve, which is like a large, publicly owned zoo, basically, right? So
Yeah.
we were kind of trying, and I remember I was looking at all these photos of past rallies to see if I could see barricades, people on the roofs, things like that. Just this real kind of, looking at open sources of information, but very carefully and in a large quantity, while everybody else at the Butler Eagle was running around like, chickens without
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Really, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So
trying to get
Controlled
as
chaos.
many local
Yeah.
folks.
So ProPublica did note that this was an isolated incident. So were you able to compare with other rallies? So it kind of sounds like what you were just saying is that you did go into a bit of that comparison of looking at past rallies or upcoming or past Secret Service vulnerabilities. Did you guys notice any past Secret Service vulnerabilities? Because they're really honing in on the Secret Service. I know the director of the Secret Service stepped down after this. Resigned is the word I was looking for in my brain. And you can take a second to think about it.
So you're asking... go ahead.
Go ahead.
Primarily Danielle, but
Sure.
if you guys can answer that too, comparing with past rallies or past Secret Service vulnerabilities.
I think one of the things that really came up over and over is that, yes, this was a one of a kind incident, obviously, but that wasn't necessarily because something was different about Butler. It was because somebody had the intent to test the security, right? We had seen, and from former Secret Service folks that I talked to, that the Secret Service over the last, I would say, 20 years or so, has been increasingly stretched thin by the number of protectees that they are engaged with. But also, I don't know that we've had a politician in many ways like President Trump in the way that he could draw a crowd and had these rallies over. I mean, certainly folks have in the past. President Obama certainly did, but this was kind of like the hallmark of his campaign, and there was just such a volume. I think it was just a perfect storm.
I know for Western Pennsylvania, we're primarily the reddest part of the state, and is that why he came here?
I think a good portion of Pennsylvania is red. Yeah, outside of
most of
the
Pennsylvania
cities
is,
and the
but
area
when we're
and such,
talking, yeah,
I mean,
like outside of Pittsburgh, if you're
Pennsylvania
looking, we're the county that would, right?
Pennsylvania is certainly,
I know Philly's a little bit more blue.
In that
so-
regard.
Yeah, it is because Philly's a little more blue, but specifically,
I don't. But there is significant support. I would say that. There is significant support from Allegheny County, even though it ultimately shows up blue on a map.
Okay.
There
was just
is
a
significant
random
support nonetheless for Trump that comes from Allegheny County. And of course from Butler County too, but Allegheny County has a higher population. So it wasn't a surprise to me that he came here.
I think a lot of people who live here and still think like, oh, we're just a small town. It's like, but we're not. I don't think that Butler really is as small as some people say. I do think that we're starting to grow.
You know, he came in the past election.
Yes.
He was in Butler County directly before Election Day.
Well, Kennedy came here too. Kennedy came here during one of his campaigns. He spoke on the steps of the courthouse. So it's just thinking about that, right? Thinking about these two, Kennedy was a young, very young. He was running against Nixon and, came from a political family, but it's just interesting to me, right? I think because I'm here and I think we're just this tiny town. Like we used to say, oh, we're from Pittsburgh. And now we can say, oh, we're from Butler. And unfortunately, people know where that is and why, which is not a fun thing to admit. But anyway, sorry.
Like Tracy said, he President Trump visited Butler before, and he targeted a number of more suburban or even exurban or rural communities in Pennsylvania because he's playing an electoral college game, right? We found in our analysis of all of those rallies I was discussing in the past, that he visited Pennsylvania more than any other state because Pennsylvania is a big prize, right? In the electoral math. Yes, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and some of the smaller urban centers show up blue, but if you can get enough voters in the in-betweens, then you get the state, right? That's the electoral college game, whether you like it or not. So it's important to engage those communities. And I think that is why President Trump was so fond of coming to Pennsylvania. He was just very embraced, but also he needed it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he did mobilize those voters. I mean, he's sitting in the White House now.
Yes.
So, and I think
did.
it made he came back in October too. And, people, again, showed up in that case. Not only from Butler in that case, they were from all around the country and even the world. I remember a couple Canadian, Australians and such too. Who showed up.
We're about to be integrated with people from all over the world for Jeep Fest here. For anyone who's listening, the Jeep originated in Butler, Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The Jeep Wrangler, the Jeep, So anyways, I'm off topic there. So, Tracy briefly mentioned this. So with another attempt in West Palm Beach happening after Butler, did your team, and this is for everyone here, get a sense that reforms were truly implemented? I think they were a little quicker on that one. Obviously, they were able to thwart any attempt, but that's my question. Any reforms were truly implemented between Butler and West Palm Beach?
To me, they're just a little different at the end of the day. One was a rally, an event, and that's really what we dug into. But the instance in Florida, just a different situation entirely. Eddie.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
I was working that day. I think it was a Sunday, I believe. So I had to look up what happened and write that up real quick.
Did
so
you?
I vaguely remember that.
Too. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was probably too soon after. I'm really stretching my memory here, but I believe it was months, right?
It was just a few months.
July to September.
Yeah.
It was a quick
but
turnaround.
I mean, obviously the key difference is that that person was stopped. So
absolutely. I think the reason for the question there, and Tammy really liked this question, so that's why I wanted to make sure I did ask it, was that once a presidential candidate elect, now president, is targeted in something like that, it starts to stir a bit of a pot. And I think it makes people who really don't like that person, who have had those thoughts, which is obviously what the man in West Palm Beach did, think, okay, well, maybe it's time. And I'm wondering if they picked up on that. And obviously they did pick up on it. Even if it wasn't a rally, it was still another attempted assassination attempt, right, on a presidential candidate. So in my thoughts, it's like, what have they done to up the ante, so to speak, to protect him? If we know any of that at all, I think that's maybe the deeper root of this question. And maybe we don't know that.
I feel like it'd be speculation for me to say anything that I don't know.
Well, because they don't tell, they're not, you guys are doing everything you can to report and to get the answers and to find out. And if no one is talking, then how are you supposed to get the answer? I think people were asking this question, and I was just curious to see.
Request the video and the audio.
And just continue to, okay.
Continue to press things forward there, but yeah.
When we talk about the Secret Service, Congress, and campaign organizers, what responsibilities should each of those bear?
I'd reference that report, that the investigation that the Congress put together ultimately, and they cast a wide net in the blame. It wasn't just Secret Service. They said that they need to enact reform too. And
Congress and campaign organizers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was that? Will you speak to that? Do you want to speak to that, Danielle?
I mean, I think it comes down, it's a shared blame, right? One of the former Secret Service members that I talked to, he wasn't an agent, but he was responsible for the police force that's part of the Secret Service. I think people don't realize there's kind of different branches. Some are providing that direct protection for like federal buildings or whatever. He recalled an instance, and this was a prior administration, where they wanted to do something and they were not consulted on whether or not it would happen. They were told to make it happen, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we don't know that that's what happened in Butler, but like Tracy and Eddie were saying, sometimes these things come together very quickly, and it's not a question of, is it responsible? Is it feasible? Is this the most secure location? Secret Service, please tell us. It's Secret Service, we're doing this, make it work, right? So when you add that kind of pressure to an already taxed system, there's only, a few hundred agents at a time that are able to kind of pull from different places, right? Yes, it's the Secret Service's fault. Yes, it's the campaign organizer's fault. Yes, it's, the candidate and the local authorities and all of that. You have to kind of look at it holistically, unfortunately. I know a lot of times there's a hunger for who is to blame, like who is one person. But a lot of times this kind of stuff is a cluster, right? Like
Absolutely.
It's a cascade. So,
and this is a question I didn't have in there, and obviously this was a rare occurrence in our town, in our county. And I know that Tracy and Eddie weren't there, but they have, Tracy is the assignment editor. You have conversations with everyone in the newsroom. You know what everyone's writing on. You're now the community editor, so you starting to take a little bit of that role probably as well. But whenever you're talking to the other journalists who were reporting, I mean, we were consistently reporting. There was stuff in the paper, just kind of updating people since this happened. And this article that we're talking about today came out August 20th. So a little over a month after, because, you're right on. Multiple systematic failures was the original title. Marred the rally. That was the original title that's sitting here on the table. When you're, working so the three of you working together on this article, that's a pretty quick turnaround to report something from something that big.
I think people wanted to know sooner, though, at the end of the day.
But that's
I have to say that. Like, people really wanted to know right away, but we had to slow it down. And
yes, because you had to get everything exactly right. You had to get the facts straight. You had to make sure that what you were reporting all came together cohesively and made sense. I think that's what I was trying to get to, is that even though it was a little over a month afterwards, if you would put something out quicker and had mistakes
aren't worth it.
They're not worth it. It's what I'm trying to get across is for the listeners to understand why something, when it comes to print journalism, might take just a little bit longer than maybe they choose. But do they want the facts? Do they want the answers? Or do they just want it quick? You know, it's that the tortoise and the hare, right? So I feel like you guys are constantly on that tortoise and the hare game. So what I wanted to say is when you first started reporting, you know, you guys were in the newsroom that Saturday night. I think you were here till what time in the morning that night? And then back, were you back on Sunday too, Tracy?
I was.
You were here till like 2 or 3 in the morning or something. Weren't you crazy?
Yeah.
Just to get
slept a bit.
because they were changing the Sunday paper. So we have a Sunday paper that goes out. There's a certain time for everything here. The articles are due by a certain date. They've got to go to composing, make sure the layout is correct. And when we're talking about layout, we're talking about what the paper looks like. Each page, is it lined or the margin right? Is everything correct? And then maybe a correction comes through. So now you're dealing with this on a Saturday and you're like, we have to get something on the front page of our paper because this is our town. So that's what you were dealing with.
To be honest with you, I was thinking about how we can get that information out as fast as possible, mostly to our digital audience. I mean, we had to come in the next day and balance print too, but really, for me, it's the same way that we ultimately got to that August 20th date, right?
Yes.
Information was coming out bit by bit by bit. And so we had to get that information out bit by bit by bit. But ultimately, it was important also while getting that out slowly and study over that time, that we also take the information we had gathered over that month and, in our case, worked with Spotlight to culminate that, like to analyze all the information we had gathered along with the information Danielle and ProPublica brought and say, okay, here's what we found.
Journalism. Why journalism?
That's a good question. I like writing. I always liked writing. I was not very good at math when I was in like high school.
Same.
And I kind of realized that being like a novelist or an author isn't really like a steady career that you can do. So when I was looking for things to do to go to college for, I landed on journalism and I really fell in love with it. And it's just kind of been like that ever since. I like to be professionally nosy.
I love that. In the know.
Yes.
In the know.
I think I love working for Spotlight because we are not a newsroom that is competitive in the way that I think journalism used to be. We really see collaboration and, more journalism is better journalism as a value. So this was a really exciting way to put that into practice. And I loved working with the folks at the Eagle. I think they're genuinely some of the best journalists in the state. They're doing work that is invaluable. And it is really, really heartening to see a local newspaper that is locally owned that seemingly values journalism in a way that has become unfortunately rare across the country.
Absolutely. Hear, 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 hear. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Sorry, I had to give you a little applause for that. I know this was quick and we just sort of met each other, but I do appreciate you jumping on and congratulations again for being a part of the Quill Award winning team. And, maybe we'll connect again one day. So thank you so much, Danielle, for your time.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you both. Good to see you again, Tracy.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank
See you around.
Bye.
So, working with Spotlight, so when we're talking about like how each newsroom approaches the story and shape public understanding, was there anything that you took away from like working with them on this? You guys,
Yeah, like right off the bat, I can tell you that the best journalism doesn't come from just one reporter, and really so here at the Butler Eagle, for instance, the one thing I'm really proud of about our news organization is that we haven't lost the editing process. We haven't lost the ability to add another voice into a story. So the reporting that you see on the pages of the paper or on the website isn't just, say, Matthew Glover's voice. It's also the result of 2 editors and a copy editor who go through that content. And those 2 editor reads are, we're working with Matt, and we're, helping to shape that story. We're pointing out holes. We're pointing out where he might have a bias. And so because all of us like come into things having some sort of bias. And so that, like, I'm so happy that we are able to work together. The more voices you have going into a report, I don't think it can hurt anything. Yes, sometimes it takes a little more time, but especially with something this big, I felt like it was so important.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, working with Spotlight was that to me. And ProPublica too. It was an opportunity to have our voices. It was 3 of us actually from the Eagle, Eddie and Irina Bukhar, who should certainly be mentioned here too. She was a big part of that reporting, even though she's not on staff here anymore. So like our voices are going into it along with Danielle's and her editing staff and ProPublica and their editing staff. And so ultimately we're pointing out different things to each other along the way. And so it was a win across the board.
Well, yeah, it absolutely paid off because here we are. It was just so important for me to explain to people that when they want answers, it's like answers are coming, right? You're just trying to get all your ducks in a row, essentially, because if you send it out and there's chickens mixed in with the ducks, people are like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. And then it's where you missed it. So I do like that.
Yeah, we're never going to be like that social media page where we're like getting things out, with, there are moments, right? Like, the assassination attempt, we had to gather the details. We had to get out what we could when we knew it and have that living document. But those opportunities to just slow down and put the resources into things that really answer questions. That's what I enjoy doing and what I think is really important. That's the value of having a local news organization like ours.
Yes. So since then and having that experience, what has changed and what hasn't?
What do you mean by that? You mean like here at the newsroom, or?
I think that can be really whatever comes to mind. It could be here in the newsroom. It could be your process. Are there things that you tend to recognize now that maybe you didn't recognize before? Does that make sense? Or how you sort of
that's a good question.
Take a second to think about it.
I think just Butler County more than anything else is that the world kind of turned their attention to us that day. And since then, we've had some other national stories come out of Butler County, too. Mark Fogel, who was detained in Russia, he was a Butler County native. He's come home to us. So definitely a lot more people, news organizations looking at Butler County and wondering, hey, what's happening here? For me, this is my community. It's where I grew up. I grew up on a goat farm here, and since then, I live, with my family and outside of Saxonburg, and it's just, like these are my friends and neighbors, and it's been so interesting to see how Butler County's been portrayed elsewhere too. And so, we as the local paper we really care to tell our story well, and the story of Corey Comparator and of the assassination attempt and its impact around here. I mean, we take it quite seriously. It's still impacting us. Maybe not daily so much anymore, but it comes up on a weekly basis. No joke. I mean, this is something that's forever going to be a part of Butler County's history.
Whenever obviously there was probably some type of stressful adrenaline rush when you got that call from Jamie and knew that you were already stepping into a role? You were stepping in for someone who was out of town, or stepping in for Donna Seibert, the managing editor, not someone. You were stepping in for Donna Seibert. So I'm sure instantly your brain was like, awesome. So I have to not only take on something that's going to be a huge challenge in my journalism career, but I also have to take it on in my current role and then the role that I'm also stepping in for. Were there things that you stressed about that, when looking back now, you would know for something in the future, like to maybe be able to say, we're going to get this, it's going to come together? Does that make sense?
I mean, yes, yeah. So I got to give Donna lots of credit too, because like we had sat down and kind of game planned before she left. She didn't leave me in a bad boat, and then she was actually on her way back from vacation that day too. And even though she didn't come in person, she did, hop in remotely, and she was with us until the 2 a.m. there too.
Yes,
and then some. But ultimately, I think I knew this though going into it. Like I didn't as a young reporter, but it's really important in those moments of high adrenaline to slow down for a minute. Like take the extra second, read it again, just double check things, because when we put things out there for the community, we're not just that like little neighborhood Facebook page. Those have lots of value and stuff too. I have nothing bad to say about them. But for us, people trust what we say, so we have to slow down. And that's what I preach to my reporters too. Like, yes, we want to get information out there as quickly as possible to people, but if we get it wrong, then we're losing our readers' trust. So we have to slow down. And so in that moment, for me, like, yes, adrenaline rush, like I get off the road, I've got my kids in the back, they're hyped up on sugar. But like for me, it was like, okay, let me sit down for a minute, make sure my kids are good, and then get this posted real quick, efficiently. But it's good to slow down in the moment.
No, that's a good
Double
point.
check yourself.
Yeah, I think in most situations that can be stressful, it's good to just take a beat, take a breath, and sort of be like, okay, take a step back and look at everything. Sorry, I'm just like looking to see if I want to
see if there's anything else we should cover.
Okay, so give me your why real quick. Why journalism? Why journalism?
I like to know the answer.
Were you a kid? Were you one of those kids that wanted to be an astronaut like me? And then you saw you had to get in that thing and spin all around. I was like, yeah, no, I'll totally vom, so I can't do that. Or was there a point? Usually, I think it's in high school where you start to recognize that you enjoy. I love what Danielle said. It's like being in the know, but being nebby, wanting to know, and then people will start to come to you after a while. Like she was probably that person in high school where people wanted to know things, and she's like, I'll find out.
Yeah.
I don't know. But what was it for you? When was it, when you went to Edinburgh, did you?
Yeah, I knew. So I was the editor of my elementary school paper, actually, at that. And
whoa, girl, you're taking it way back.
I know. Yeah, I knew.
What elementary school did you go to?
I went to a small Catholic elementary school called St. Wendellin's in Oakland Township.
Okay.
And then I went on to high school, where, again, like I worked my way up. My senior year, I was the editor or co-editor with another wonderful girl. And I was that there. And then I went to college, did the same thing. And here I am fortunate to work as the assignment editor. And I knew for a long time that I enjoyed writing, and along the way I liked being able to answer people's questions and tell both sides of the story. I felt like, especially as I've kind of got further into this, that ability that I do think I have to kind of slow down and listen to both sides right now is really important. And so that's what's kept me in this field, even if it makes me a little crazy sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah, I've kind of stuck at it because I think it's important that we find the answers and listen to different opinions to find those answers.
Absolutely. Anything else?
No, just thank you so much for having us here today.
I just wanted to highlight you guys winning this award. It's a big deal.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. We like doing this kind of stuff. And for me, I mean, yes, we have an award, and it's currently sitting by my desk, and I am proud of that.
Yeah, you
But
should be.
For me, like, just that we were able to do this reporting and have that for our community and explain, at least give some of the answers. I don't know if we'll have all of the answers about this one here. There's a lot of questions that still exist around it. But that we were able to provide some of those answers for our audience was important to me.
I do feel like it was a catalyst for a lot of things.
Yeah.
July 13th, a lot shifted whenever that happened. For me personally, I grew up in Mount Chestnut, and I could see the lights from the farm show ground. I drive past it every day on my way to work, and knowing that someone lost their life there, when that is typically a ground for joy and celebration and freedom, if you're thinking about it, for anyone who isn't, really a fan, I sort of looked at that day as something that it was trying to teach us something. I don't know what yet, and I may never know, but I think there's also always a lesson in tragedy and being respectful to the family, Corey's family and of that area for sure. I saw something the other day. It made me a little sad. I was driving past on the fence. Someone did put like a memorial. There's like a sign or something there. And I know they have talked about possibly putting something there. In Boston, I lived in Boston, and they have plaques where the bombing happened, where people lost their lives. They have like it's a tiny little statue thing, but then there's some plaques on the ground dedicated to them. And if you think about it, that's all he was doing. He was with his family that day. And to us, it's just this place that, in August we go and eat fried food and funnel cakes and hot dogs and caramel apples and play carnival games and ride the Ferris wheel or whatever. Because I can't ride anything other than the Ferris wheel these days. I don't know about you. You have kids, so you might have to ride those other rides. But people still, regardless of whatever their political affiliation is, need to be respectful of what did happen there, and that, it changed our town. We don't want to be remembered for that. We want to be remembered for the fact that our local newspaper stepped up and did everything that they could, and are continuing to stay in the loop, right? And continuing to report. I mean, you're doing a 1-year anniversary.
Yeah, and our community's really kind of stepped up too. Like, don't get me wrong. There's been challenges, and there have been moments that we've had to cover here too that aren't all good and but there are also many ways where our community's rallied around Corey's wife Helen and their family, and in that regard, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm so proud to have been from Butler County and and to have grown up here and grew up going to the farm show and all of that. Like, and so yes, it changes things. It's a living history here, and so more to come, no doubt.
Yes, absolutely more. Well, thank you, Tracy.
Yeah.
And, when you're picking up your paper, look for her name. So
it's in there sometimes.
So,
yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
So, Eddie, you came in on Sunday, July 14th. Tell us what that was like. What happened?
So I knew what happened from the day before. I think Donna or Tracy probably called me. I don't have the exact time, but probably at like 8 a.m.
Yeah, you don't need the time.
Yeah, probably like 8 a.m., honestly. And they asked if I could come in. I was supposed to be off, and I said, okay. I expected, I like to try to help out when things are going wrong or if people, I knew it was a situation that they'd need help with, and I thought I could help.
Yeah.
So, I think William Pitts was also working that day, but it was just too much for one person. So I knew that I believe the state police had a press conference scheduled at the Butler Township Municipal Building to tell everybody, to get it all out at once about the person who died at the rally, who turned out to be Corey Compatore. And so I think Will went there, and I had to go somewhere else. It's vaguely escaping me, but I called I believe I called Butler Township Police, Connoquenessing.
I'm sure their lines were like ringing off the hook.
Yeah,
so there's that.
The city of Butler, even though it wasn't in the city limits, just all these people, the county commissioners, the sheriff. I believe I talked to Mike Sloop that day. And basically what we were trying to do for Monday's paper was like get everything we could to say like what happened and who was there. Because, Tracy mentioned it before, but when we finally got the big piece out in August, that was like a month's worth almost of reporting. And like that was after a lot of news releases, a lot of talks and everything. But just for Monday, we just needed the bare essentials, whatever we could get, who was there, what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think they released the name of the shooter too at the conference.
So I wanted to ask you about that at all. Did you go into that at all? Were you a part of researching and writing about the shooter and his story?
Yeah, I did. So we found out the shooter's name and I believe where he was from, which was Bethel Park. And the cops at that point, anything about like motive would have been speculation. So that stuff you probably get later, way later, and like I said, we don't really get it, but people can put together like a chain of actions that the guy went on, which eventually came out to that day. But just for Monday's paper, it was just about who died, what happened, who can we talk to, who was in charge, which I believe we found out was like the Secret Service had like given a little bit of info, but the state police and Butler Township Police and the sheriff and I don't remember if I talked to the ESU that day, but the Emergency Services Unit, but they were also there. So just getting a chronicle of who was all there was, I think, the important part for the next day.
I want to ask you, as a writer, when you are reporting on something like this significant, not that any reporting isn't significant, but something that there's a lot of sensitive information and you have to get it in a timely manner. I guess you're talking to people, you're researching, but where do you start when you sit down and actually start typing or writing? Like, how do you start writing? Like, what's your...
Well, for something like that, it's pretty kind of cut and dry because, like, you get the info from the cops who will tell you, at least from their sources, the cops said that, Trump was shot at 5 p.m. and by blah, blah, blah. This is what happened. This is the response. So it's pretty easy to start, actually, as long as you
have like a format or something.
Yeah, well, they call it the inverted pyramid, the important stuff at the top, especially for a breaking news story like that. So
yeah, date, time, where, when.
Yeah, so that was pretty easy. But then like you get into the specifics and it gets a little more complicated. But luckily, you're probably going to have about everything you're going to have because it was such a truncated period and it was less than 24 hours later that they were sharing this info. So they only gave us what they could give us, and they luckily, and this isn't something that, I don't know if luckily is the right word, but when you have all these news outlets reporting on the same thing, you can at least like check yourself at least and make sure that everyone, and it's what the cops want too, to make sure everybody has the same info. So,
yeah. Let me think, what else? Journalism, I think, was this something you wanted to also talk about again? Why'd you get into journalism? You said, I want more from you, Eddie.
Okay.
You said that the reason you got into journalism was because you didn't want to have to sit at a desk all day, and you knew as a journalist you'd be able to get up and go out and talk to people and be reporting. Okay, yeah, but what about the writing? There had to be... Did you write as a kid? Were you big into like newspapers at school or anything like that growing up?
Well, I was really into the newspaper comics. Like I love Calvin and Hobbes.
Yeah.
But that's beside the point. But,
yeah. Well, is it though?
Yeah, good point. But
it
so
might not be.
Yeah,
that's cool.
But so I do actually, I do like to not be sitting around at a desk all day, and I actually find people fascinating. So it's nice to like, in a small newsroom like this, go out and talk to folks that are doing interesting things, especially as the community editor. I get to do that a lot. And I do like to write, and it's kind of like putting a puzzle together of information you have and trying to make it interesting and do justice to a person. So
yes,
I do like the writing too. It's true.
Yes. Now, during this, how many stories, and again, we're specifically referring to the Quill Award
Mm-hmm.
and the article that you won. It was August 20th of 2024. So a little over a month from the actual attempted assassination. However, in that period, how much were you writing? Because, I mean, you're on the community page. You were even before you were the community editor, before Paula left.
Mm-hmm.
You were primarily doing that, correct? Like
Well,
more
no,
community, or no?
I was
No?
I was covering Butler and
Oh, that's
they
right.
break
You were
it up
Butler
like,
City,
yeah,
right?
the city and township in the center of the county. But I did
yeah.
a few community stories. But that's why I was in a good position to cover the happenings after that rally, because I knew all the people that
that you
and
needed
that
to
would've-
connect with. Yeah,
that would have been a good thing to talk about with Danielle.
Danielle. Well, why don't you talk about it a little bit, since
Well,
I know it's hard. So just to let everybody know that's listening, this episode, these reporters, Eddie had to leave because he had to go and report on something. He
Yeah,
had
yeah,
to.
yeah.
I literally looked outside and watched him get in his car outside my office. So
oh geez.
understanding that putting this episode together, it was coordinating and not sitting down beforehand and having initial conversations. So they really just came up with this. But why don't you just talk about it?
Yeah, so I think the benefit of working with Spotlight PA is they have she had the know-how of how to file those right to know requests. I didn't
Yes.
know about sending certified mail to the state and all about getting police body cam footage. That's really
Well, that was
interesting.
crucial. That was
Yes,
crucial.
it was, yeah. And we managed to get it. I think that it was disseminated through all the police departments as well, and we were able to get it, I believe, from Butler Township Police.
Okay.
And eventually it was floating around online, which is maybe, say what you will about that. But we got it
Yes.
legitimately. So, but our
To use it. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
but our benefit was I knew I had Butler Township Police chief, their cell phone numbers, everyone at Connoquenessing Township. I knew all their names. We know everybody around here. Like Mike Sloop, I have his cell phone, and all the county commissioners. So
We
our
should just call him. Just call Mike right now and be like, "Hey,
Yeah,
Mike, what's
sure.
up? We're talking about the
July 13th.
July 13th."
But that's the benefit of working as a team with a organization that covers more statewide issues,
Mhm.
is that we had the connections here, and we can funnel information to them, and they could funnel information to us, and it was really collaborative. So when you can have 100 story ideas just based off who you can talk to for one thing, and that's kind of what happened. I remember I called the coroner, William Young. He told me he was the one who looked at the shooter.
Oh,
He,
wow.
Yeah, that
He
the
had
night
to
of
identify him and all of
cause
that.
of death.
Yes.
Who else did I talk to? I talked to all the business owners by the farm show grounds, like Cummings, and what else? There was a couple more out there. So that's kind of what I think the benefit of the local newsroom is that we have all those connections that we can talk to, and they won't be as apprehensive to talk to us because they know we'll probably see them, see them around, because we're right. I live in Butler, so I'll
Yes.
see,
Yes.
so they have a little bit more, I guess, stream of information back, like give and take, because we're not just going to bounce, which I'm not saying not every newsrooms are good at different things, but that was our benefit.
What do you think, just in general, not only on this, is the hardest thing about what you do?
Well, it's definitely time management's important.
Mhm.
I think that month was the most stressful month I can remember.
I'm sure.
I'm not it was hard.
Do you ever find after that, especially because that was definitely something that people were probably talking about, did you have people ever approach you outside of work or in other capacities? I mean, people will make comments to me about, the Butler Eagle and this and that, and I'm looking at them, I'm like, you do know that I work there. I'm just saying this on the podcast because people will come up to me and say, well, why haven't they reported on this yet? And I said, you do understand when you're talking about a criminal investigation, not only a federal investigation, right?
Well, that stuff, yeah. That stuff is we get all the police reports from all the judges' offices around here, but
Yes.
people all see people, and I don't think hopefully everybody, I usually don't have any bad interactions.
A lot of people don't seem to understand is you get information, right? And then you report it back, but you can't be biased.
Well, yes, but that's
Is that
why,
hard? Is it hard to often write about things and not be biased?
well, I think when you use something like this, the magic word is said. This person said, because you're not saying you're not really using you're using your writing voice, but
you didn't say it. You're
yes.
literally saying, you're telling people this is what this person said.
Yeah, and that's something that I've always.
Do you think people glaze over that at times? And
maybe they don't realize, but that's always, I am like, especially myself, when I write anything, I like use said like so many times. Like, just this person said this, like, so.
Of course.
Because like that's what you're working with. You're not working with, ideas. You're working with words that came out of people's mouths.
Yes. So
that's,
exactly.
I don't know. That's something maybe folks, and it depends on the news organization, and everyone does it a little different, but that's my magic word, is just said.
Eddie, talk a little bit more about going through all of the footage, because that was part of your job, right?
Yeah.
What was that like? And how long do you think you spent?
Well, the videos ranged from like, I believe like 20 seconds to like maybe 20 minutes or so. There was some long ones, and a lot of them were specifically, I don't know how, I'm sure the cops had a protocol for this, but what we got was all related to like what happened like in the lead up to the shooting, and then like maybe like a couple minutes after.
Okay.
So it wasn't like you didn't have to watch the whole entire rally from one policeman's perspective. It wasn't like, 3 hours. It was like 20 minutes maybe.
Because one of the ones that's on our YouTube channel, it's from the cop driving in his car, driving around, standing outside the building, or being outside the building. It's from the car. He's in the car still, and you can see other officers, but outside the AGR building. It's like, that's one of them, and that's kind of all it is, right? So you probably had multiple of those.
Did you
get all of the? Yeah.
I think there was like maybe 12 or 13 videos. I should have checked, but most of them were.
Okay.
Yeah, there was that one. I think that was the only one that was the cop car. I'm not positive I took much from that, except that just like this was an officer who was there. I don't think we had his name, but it was someone there. But the other ones, some of them like were yelling at people to get around. I believe one of them, they got on the roof. That was kind of interesting to see. Yeah. Like they were talking, like there's one video where a state trooper's talking to one of the Secret Service guys, like on the roof, and you see the shooter in the background, his body. So like that was something that I think they edited, like just to like, I don't know, help not make it as graphic.
And I think it's for respect.
I guess
it's hard to it's hard to use that word in this instance. Like that's not probably the perfect word, but in a sense, it is a person that has lost their life. So I believe that it was appropriate for them to do that, to cut that out.
So I think that was the main one, was that it showed, the video I used was a state trooper talking to a Secret Service guy, and just like using what the Secret Service person said in that video, because it was right there. You see him on camera. And it's not much, but you could just say like what the scene was like and what the videos show. So
yes. Okay. Thanks, Eddie.
All right. Thanks. I'm glad I could contribute a tad more.
Yeah. Thank you for tuning in to Alter Eagle. Join me every Monday for a new episode. And be sure to click subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Follow us on Instagram at Alter Eagle Podcast. Until next time, stay safe, stay hopeful, stay kind.